and welcome to this edition of In a Matter of Minutes. In this edition, In a Matter of Minutes, we're joined by Director of Advertising Compliance, Dawn Thomason. And today we are going to be chatting about a couple of questions that we've gotten over time as we've gone through the COVID-19 pandemic and launched webinars from traditional seminars, as well as moving from in-person client appreciation events to remote client appreciation events via Zoom and webinar, just like Dawn and I are doing today. So Dawn, thanks so much for joining me today. It's great to have you. Yeah, and one of the things that I've always appreciated over my time of being at USA Financial is the great working relationship between marketing and compliance. It's really what allows us to provide the best service that we can for our advisors, and this is no exception. So I'm really excited for this conversation.
Same. Thank you. Yeah.
So let's jump into talking about, the difference between the live in-person web, a seminar versus a webinar type seminar. What are the differences? What should advisors know when it comes to the differences and really more importantly, the similarities between those two?
I was about to say, I think it's more similar than people would initially assume. I think when you hear about a potential virtual event or the idea or the hurdle of hosting a virtual webinar, a virtual seminar, that's scary. Even for me preparing for this call, it's scary when you know that you're going to be recorded. And then on top of all of the pressure, you have the compliance end to deal with. The good news about the compliance part of all of this is it's no different than if you were to host an in-person event. So pretty recently, FINRA put out a frequently asked questions related to the regulatory relief for the COVID pandemic, where they explicitly outlined what it looks like to do a virtual event and what the requirements are. Members aren't required to record the presentation if it's a bona fide live event. So what that means is if it's a one-time Zoom call and or any of the platforms that you choose to use, Zoom's obviously a pretty popular one, but it could be Teams, GoToMeeting, any of them. If it's not recorded and it's live one time, you don't have to record it, but everything that you do in preparation for that event is no different than you would do for any other seminar. So rather than being behind a podium presenting, you're behind a computer screen, and that's your podium. So the going up to the event, any kind of invite that you're going to do or promotion would all come in the same as a physical mailer would come in. And sometimes it is a physical mailer that's inviting people to the webinar. Sometimes it's an email blast. Anything like that would come in for pre-approval. Any kind of reminder emails would also come in for pre-approval. The actual event, you have your PowerPoint presentation, that would come in for pre-approval. But if you're not comfortable screen sharing and you want to do something like this, where it's just a dialogue, you might have some bulleted speaker notes that you go through, and those would just come in for pre-approval, a loose script, not verbatim, but just what you plan to talk about at the event. If there's any handouts that you want to mail or email in advance, or even mail a physical packet to the people in advance, that would come in for pre-approval. And then if there's any kind of thank you cards that you want to send in the mail to take it off screen and more into physical tangible item, you would send those in if it was like a letter for pre-approval. So everything looks very similar to your traditional in-person seminar that you would be doing. It's like I said, you just kind of have to wrap your mind around the fact that you don't have that podium anymore. You just have your computer as your podium. And then it's, I think, way more approachable for people to kind of get used to and get comfortable with what it takes compliance-wise behind the scenes to make one of these events happen. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say you don't need to record the event, though, unless you choose to. So if you want to, I would be more comfortable knowing something would be edited before being distributed, unless you're a seasoned speaker. most people that would know me would know I'm more comfortable behind the screens, not in front of the groups of people. So if you're more comfortable knowing that it would be edited in advance and it was something that you were recording and was maybe made to look live but wasn't actually live, that recording does need to come in and be pre-approved, versus if it was an actual, like I said, bona fide live event, that is not subject to any kind of recording or pre-approval requirements. So.
Yeah. So like with our digital fill the room process, where the advisor gets the chance to go through, have multiple takes and say, you know, that didn't really work out. That was the practice run. We're going to toss that in the recycle bin, do it again and say, yes, that's the one. This is the perfect take. And we'll go forward with that one. So and then that recording would go through compliance, just like any other video production would be done.
Yep.
And you know, if it's for the digital fill the room system, or if it's a webinar that's going to go out on their approved YouTube channel or on their website for, you know, to direct any prospects or clients to, that could be done there. So it's really exciting.
This is kind of to all of us. I was going to say, so if I just wouldn't hesitate, I'd be calling you, like, not just to say, what do I do? How do I do this? Hold my hand through it. And then I think it's like anything else. Once you've done it once, then the mystery's gone. So
you're exactly right. That's the biggest hurdle to get over, is just jumping in, doing it once, trying it. The one thing that we've discovered as we've been coaching advisors through, you know, getting into Zoom calls or webinars in general, is that the clients and the prospects too, clients especially though, are really open to, hey, this is new for both of us. We realize there are, you know, mistakes are going to happen. They're going to be glitches, and, you know, they're really understanding in that.
Yeah, there was, I think in terms of just getting over that initial hurdle, there was an interesting article that Andrea pointed me to, actually, on Think Advisor, that said less than 40% of financial advisors, it was just put out a few days ago, 40% of financial advisors have actually made the jump to doing any kind of digital webinars or meetings, where if you think about the point of the article was that doctors had, and a lot of other professions had, and it was in the midst of this, almost an expectation where you have people taking yoga classes through Zoom and anything you can think of. So why wouldn't a financial advisor also be there? And it is more approachable than people think.
Certainly. That one of the big things that we've realized as a company is that the Teams meetings that we've been able to have with our advisors who might be in California or Florida or wherever it happens to be, that it's so much better than just picking up the phone, that we actually get to see their face, where we might only be able to see them once or twice a year. Now we get to have that FaceTime, and it really helps to foster that relationship.
Yeah. And I think the same would go with your clients. If you need to convey, you know, like calmness through the midst of this pandemic and with the markets, how volatile they've been, people are looking for somebody relatable, somebody that they can talk to. And if they can read the expressions on your face, you've already eliminated a hurdle in terms of communication right there. So
very true. Well, speaking of easing things, let's talk about a little bit more fun. Talking about doing remote client appreciation events. I know we've had a lot of different questions come in, just like we sometimes get questions about, do I have to put my parents' Christmas gift on the gift log? And, can I only spend $100? Let's talk a little bit about doing remote client appreciation events. I have a regular game night that we do once a month, and the group has gone to Zoom and online type things, and we will send each other snacks in the mail or things like that. So let's talk about how taking a client appreciation event, or even just a small gathering, I mean, it'd be a client appreciation event, but like a trivia night or a wine tasting or something like that. Talk me through how that differs from let's get together at this local winery or brew pub and do something like that. Right.
So what you're really touching on, I would leave all of the creative ideas to you, right? Like the game nights, the trivia night, if the execution of that and the wine tasting, I know that's been a big one, especially out on the West Coast. But so you do have your FINRA Rule 3220, that's your gifting rule that limits gifts to $100 per person per year.
Mm-hmm.
And those are your Christmas gifts in the mail that you're sending to people.
Birthday cookies.
Yeah, whatever it might be. So we have the letter from 1999 from Henry Cooper, who was then, it was then the NASD, over to T. Rowe Price, and T. Rowe Price was asking for some interpretive guidance surrounding business and entertainment expenses and how that would fit in with the $100 per person per year. Sure. And what came out of that letter was that business and entertainment expenses are excluded from that Rule 3220. That it was then Rule 3060, but it's since been revised. Requirement for $100 per person per year, provided that the entertainment is neither so frequent or extensive that it would raise any question of propriety. So can't be sending people out to extreme vacations and the advisor's going with them, or we can't be,
we can't send $400 bottles of wine.
Right. That's actually the difference right there. So you hit the nail on the head about sending a bottle of wine. The business and entertainment expenses considers that the advisor would be participating with the recipient or with the client, versus it would not be excluded and it would be subject to the gifting rules so long as it was just a gift and the advisor wasn't participating. So if you send a bottle of wine and it comes with a nice note, it's a beautiful gift that you've given to the client to help ease the stress of the pandemic, but you aren't partaking in any kind of virtual wine tasting event or anything like that, it's just a gift, then it is subject to your $100 per person per year. You have to log it on the gift log, standard practice. But you mentioned a wine tasting event, and I do know those have been popular out on the West Coast. If you're sending a client a wine sampler that came from the local winery or whatever it might be, online gift store, wherever you may have purchased it from, and you're actually hosting the trivia night, or you're actually hosting the event at which these snacks or this wine or whatever it might be is meant to be consumed as part of that business and entertainment expense where the advisor is participating, that isn't subject to the rules. The only rule is that it needs to be reasonable, not so frequent or extensive that it would raise any concerns as to the motivation of it being delivered. But a box of snacks, a sampler of wine, something like that, you are free to send to your clients. And I know that actually does get expensive. My sister sent me wine in the mail, a sampler thing, and it does get expensive to send that. So I think it might be a little bit of a relief to know that it's not subject to your $100. You're not choosing between sending your client a Christmas gift or inviting them to participate in a client appreciation event, so long as you're actually also present and included.
Certainly. That makes a lot of sense. So just like anything else, if you send them to the theater and dinner and a movie, if you're not there, subject to the $100 gift limit. If you go with them, that's a totally different thing. You go to the symphony. Now it is a group event where you are present. That's entertainment, not on the gift log. So just like with the seminar, going to a webinar, it's basically the exact same thing. The only thing that we've introduced is how we are communicating back and forth in that. That makes a lot of sense.
Same thing too with any materials, any deliverables, send them in for pre-approval. The same way you would have though for an in-person wine tasting or an in-person trivia night or luau. I've seen any kind of anything you can think of that you would do in person that you take online. You're right. The online's the only thing that's different. So.
Well, fantastic. I think this has provided a lot of great clarity in what we've been putting out. And, for advisors that do have questions about, the specifics of how do I go about doing this in terms of setting up a webinar, doing Zoom, all of that, feel free to reach out to the marketing department for help with that. Refer to our white paper that we put out about being a digital advisor, which goes through all of the different, lighting and cameras cameras and action items.
We had that prior to recording this. There was
That's
a little
right.
bit of block out this light, scoot backwards. We've read the white paper. I've read the white paper. So.
Yeah, had to go through compliance. So
Right?
but yeah, that's the other thing is test it out ahead of time. Don't make
Yeah.
your big moment that time. Dawn and I spent, as she referenced, good 10, 15 minutes before this recording going through, okay, let's make sure we do this, don't do that, going through our little bit of outline of what we're going to cover. So you get a little sneak peek of what goes on behind the scenes. And we highly recommend, the more you practice, the more you look at yourself and say, nope, I don't like that. I need to fix my hair over here, or let's add a little more light to remove this light over there, or the background is distracting. I have lights at the top of my bookcase that I have off right now, so it's not glaring down. So you get to take a look at your surroundings and see if it looks good or not. So
yeah, it's a different experience, that's for sure. It's different, but
yeah. Well, thanks so much again, Dawn, and stay tuned for next week for another In a Matter of Minutes.